I'm a Jewish man who grew up in the USSR with a mother who had left her faith and father who hated God. The last thing on my mind was Jesus, but even then, I was on his mind. My grandparents were believers, and my grandfather prayed over me when I was barely 6 months old that God would save me. He died soon after, but his prayer would live on. 12 years later, I was visiting my grandmother, and she happened to be having a prayer meeting at her home. It was at that prayer meeting that God saved me. When my father learned that I have become a Christian, the first thing he did was get drunk. My father was furious, and I remember he said about my grandfather, "I knew he would get you into this." And he was right. God heard the prayer of my grandfather and saved me. When I was around 10, I fell in love with fencing. It was my life. More than anything, I wanted to be on the Olympic fencing team. That was my dream and what I was working for. When I was 18, I had to serve my mandatory term in the Soviet army. At this time, Christians were dealt with harshly in the Soviet Union. I spent many nights praying in the bathroom because it was the only safe place to pray. It was a very difficult time, but God was faithful and He was with me through it all. Soon after I got out of the military, I met and later married my wife Tatiana. Persecuted because of faith, my wife and I decided to move to Israel, but we were denied entry at the time due to being Messianic Jews. So instead we moved to America. Once in the US, we heard of a Bible college in Texas, and hungry for knowledge, we moved to Dallas. It was hard at first because I knew almost no English, and I was working 4 jobs to take care of my wife and sons. Then we heard about a local congregation that supported Israel, so we started attending. After graduating, I owned my own business, and my wife was finishing fashion school with top honors. It was around this time that I met Dr. Wayne Wilkes and Brian Bernice. We quickly discovered that we have a lot in common in regards to Jewish ministry. It was this providential meeting that would eventually be the beginning of the Messianic Jewish Bible Institute and the fulfillment of the calling on my life. After the fall of the former Soviet Union, the needs were great and the doors were open for the gospel to be preached. Thousands of Jewish people in Ukraine were believing in Christ but in need of teaching and discipleship. That is why MJBI was formed. We sold everything we owned in the US to serve God. We left our careers and comforts behind to take the gospel to the Jews of my homeland, Ukraine. The early years were difficult and there were many hardships, but I knew firsthand of God's love for His people, and giving up was never an option. I did not know then, but I would eventually become the director of the MJBI in Odessa, Ukraine. Being a part of the MJBI has been a continual blessing in my life, because I see lives changed through the teachings of the gospel and graduating hundreds of students that have established ministries, congregations, and outreach to meet the needs of the Jewish people throughout my country and former Soviet Union. Your gifts have changed my life and the lives of other Jewish people. Now, being equipped, we can make a difference in our communities. My story is just one of many. On behalf of myself and the other MJBI directors around the world, thank you, thank you, thank you.